still waiting. How's everybody doing today? Can everybody hear me out there? Gotta wait for these slow responses on the Hangout versus the YouTube stream. Going once, going twice. Can everybody hear me out there? Everybody's good out there? Hmm. If anybody can hear me, press one. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so we're waiting on Mr. Powell. He's having a little difficulty with his Google Hangout. So um, we're just waiting on him to get things squared away. But as you can see, he's the guy. If you saw the cover of the advertisement, he's the guy on the left with the saxophone next to Rick James. So he was with the Stone City Band and had a group called. I don't want to say everything. I want him to really explain, um, the things that he's done over the years. But I'm quite sure a lot of you would have I mean, a lot of you guys would really take a lot from what he has to explain, and he's just doing what he does. Um, I was taken aback on some of the stuff that he told me behind the scenes, though. I'm like, wow, they need to hear this. I'm not sure if if anybody probably want to get into some Dave Chappelle, Rick James stories. I'm not sure about that. Is that him right there? Stars Worldwide. Wow, is that? I think that's him. Stars Worldwide. Yeah, it is him. Okay. Yeah, so he's uh the link right I mean the one that says stars worldwide, when he says hello, that's Chris Powell, you guys. That's him. So you might want to subscribe, click on his channel and subscribe to it. He's doing a lot of things, but we're just waiting on him to shoot through and do the Google Hangout and if you have any questions as well. Oh wow, we got Dr. G. Honored for you to come, Dr. G. Appreciate you showing up. We're just waiting on our honored guest to come through with his Google Hangout so we can get things started. Okay, so you see, you know how these things are. It's kind of hard. Let's see, he's calling me right now. Let's see how we doing here. Yes, sir. Oh no. Okay. Let me do this again. I sent you the Google Hangout. Right now, you're on the YouTube stream. You're in the YouTube chat. So let me. Oh, really? Okay, let me pop this in here again. Okay, so here, I'm gonna send you another one. So you guys, he's going to be here very shortly. Um, so hang tight. I got 8 people watching. That's good. I appreciate the 10 likes. Thank you very much, everyone. So he's going to click on that, any minute. So he's walking. So just imagine him walking through the hallways, and they got the cameras and things going, and he's walking past the dressing room, right? And I'm sitting here with my notes, ready to ask questions. So just imagine that right now. We got the band waiting on him. You know, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, he's coming through. He's coming through, you guys. He's all he has to do is click on that link, and we're going to get the show started right away. So it's Yeah. You know what you should do? Probably hang up, and I think your email will come in a lot faster. Okay. I'll wait for you. Okay. All right. So give it about a couple of minutes, you guys. Maybe even less than that. So sorry for the late start. I even put on some of my cheesy music I made back in the day. So again, we got King Wage up in the building. We have Dr. Shar Willie. Just ask Shar. Please support her channel. Support Dr. G. Support all the people's channel here. The King Wage. We should call him King Cook Wage. Uh, we got Black First in here. We got my twin reigning woman in here. I appreciate everybody coming through. So as soon as you hit that link,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So do you want to show yourself, or do you want to just have like a logo?
Well, at the moment I'm driving, so let's keep it. let's let
Right now we can
let's
see.
keep it stupid simple for a moment.
You can always hit that camera side, and you can cover your.
I think it's actually looking at me, so I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing myself, so I don't know if you can or
You,
not. So,
you prefer people to see your face, or while you talk, or do you want to?
I don't care at this point in time. I'm driving, so whatever's there is what you see is what you get, or what
Okay.
you hear is what you get as well.
All right. So I'm going to unveil you now, ladies and
Oh
gentlemen.
my goodness.
This is Mr. Chris Powell. I'm sorry, Chris Powell. I'm thinking of basketball player.
That's right.
The great,
Live and direct.
yes, this is the great guru. I consider him the guru.
Live and direct.
Yeah, he is the guru of music, you guys. I have so many conversations with this brother. I pick his brain. I think a lot of you guys need to really start listening to brothers like him, because he's been in the game for years. He knows what he's talking about. So, are you okay there? Everything's good over there, Powell?
As good as they can get. Like I say, I'm driving. I'll try to find a place where it's not as bad. We just had a show with the kids. So, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you very extremely clear.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm cool as long.
Uh-oh. I guess sometimes the reception is going to be pretty bad, huh? Let's see. You froze on me. Okay, now you're back. Okay.
No, a call came in, and I don't know how to stop the calls from coming in. That's all.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get into it. So
All right. Well, get into it. Get involved. Get into it.
there you go. There you go. So, how did you get into the music business in the first place?
Oh man. Well, as a kid, I used to watch the Mickey Mouse Club, and I think I fell in love with the. I wanted to be a Mouseketeer, and so I kind of wanted to be on Disney. And I used to ask my mom and them like, "How come I'm not on Disney show?" And she was just laughing at me, and so I always wanted to do it. So I was always singing and playing around. And my mom and them had back in them they had reel to reels, and so what I would do is I would record myself on the reel to reels, catch myself singing, and so I probably started singing and doing all that stuff around the fifth grade, about 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old. So I always
So,
wanted to do it.
was this in the 60s or the 70s, 60s?
That would have been the late 60s. Yeah.
And this is in Ohio?
Yep, in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. So, and so after that, how did you get interested in like singing, instruments?
Well, yeah, we always put together like singing groups and stuff like that, doing talent shows and stuff like that. But we put a band together, a local band, high school band, and back in the like late 60s and 70s, Ohio had a lot of music going on. You know, we had the Ohio Players, the Isley Brothers, the OJs, you know, Slave, and all of those groups came out of Ohio. And so there were always, with the radio stations playing the music from Ohio and talking about Ohio, each high school pretty much in my city and probably all throughout all throughout Ohio probably had local bands. And so my local band got good enough that when people like the Main Ingredient or the Delphonics or even the guy that had the song Do the Funky Chicken, we would tour and play with groups like that. My local group became we were one of the better groups in Columbus, let's say that. And then we would back up some of the big artists and even tour with them, even as we were in middle school. So we realized that we were always backing these groups, and the singers got all the girls, so then we started singing. So we put out a record when we were about 16 years old. When I was about 16, we had a group called the Soul Superbs, which was a local group, and you know, we were singing like the Delphonics with the high voices and all that. Even though I'm a horn player, we started touring. So I've been touring since I was probably 14 or 15 years old.
Wow. Now,
but we were finally able to tour with our own record when I got to be about 16.
So, I mean, are there any? Did you have any competition that we would know of that raised the star, that risen to stardom? You know, from back in that day.
When you say competition, right. I mean like
you mentioned different people. So
well, like for example, the Barcades or Mandrill would come to town, groups like that, and they would, you know, the DJ on the radio station might be doing an interview with our band, and he would be talking about, well, you know, who's going to be the best, who's going to win tonight. You know what I'm saying? You know, they come into Columbus, so y'all going to kick their butt, or what's going to happen? So we had that kind of mantle that we were, you know, it's Ohio pride, man. You coming into Ohio, we're trying to kick your butt as a local group. Kind of like if you ever saw the movie The Five Heartbeats, imagine that with bands. That's really how we grew up. So even from a local standpoint, the bands that were, again, these are all local groups. Ohio Players, you know, Lakeside, Young Underground, or Revelation Funk, which had James Ingram in it. A group called what's the name of that group? The group that had the song "Play That Funky Music," Wild Cherry. They were all from Ohio. These were all to us like local groups. So two of the guys from my group ended up being part of the Barcades. So this was the kind of environment that I grew up in. You know, this was a local environment. So, you know, that to me, that's a local group. Just anybody from Ohio that was, you know, the OJs. I can remember when the OJs would come in here and they were battling local groups, you know, the singing group here or the Ohio Players. I can remember Bootsy and them being with the House Guests, you know what I'm saying, and battling a group in Columbus, you know what I'm saying, battling Ohio Players or something like that.
So the competition was based on how, of course, how good the group was as far as how their the skill sets were established. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, the skill set, their show set. You know what? You know, because you had to perform back in those days. It wasn't, you know, your outfits was part of your show. Your outfits, your musical ability too. So you wasn't just on there playing. You know, in those days you had to put on a show. So you had to not only have strong musical ability, but you had to put on a show. So for us, for example, we looked up to the Ohio Players, but our horn section was better than Ohio Players. That's how we looked at stuff. And so we would, you know, and I know that sounds wild, but, you know, that's how we practice. We practice like 8 hours a day. And especially when we hit LA, we were practicing 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. and 12 hours a day, 2 days a week. But I mean, that's how much we practiced. And I mean, again, Lakeside, all of those groups came out of Ohio. Sun, Slave, you know, this was the James Gang, the Isley Brothers, Summer Cool in the Gang. You know, this was like we had a rich part of what I would call the funk history. And so we're talking about early 70s through mid 75. You know, we was funking hard.
Now, just for sake of the listeners, what is your musical instrumental background? How did you?
What's my what?
What was your instrumental background? How did you be able to go through training? Was it self-taught?
Well, I just went to basic band school. You know what I'm saying? Basic middle school. We just put our band together. So I don't really have like a whole bunch of technical history. I mean, we just learned in band, and then we put a band together. But we were pretty blessed because, again, we backed up some of the bigger groups as they came through Ohio. And if you go into history, when we hit LA, I was for a brief while, I was working with a guy named Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was doing horn arrangements for Stevie Wonder, and he brought us into the studio to, he was producing us for a minute. So Trevor Lawrence asked us did we want to meet Stevie, and he took us into the studio to meet Stevie at Crystal Sound, and Stevie was doing the album Songs of the Key of Life. And Stevie was like real cool people and was showing us different instruments and said, hey, you guys want to play on my album? And we're like, shoot, sure. You know what I'm saying? You know, next thing you know, we're playing percussion on the song I Wish. And we were just a part of it. We were just having fun, you know. And he was so cool. I also worked with Leon Silver's father. The Silvers basic taught us 5-part harmony. So our group at that time was called Ohio Silver. Excuse me, Ohio Silver. And if you look on the credits for Stevie Wonder's albums on the Thank You, you'll see on that Songs of the Key of Life album, you'll see Ohio Silver. And we took that name from working with Mr. Silver, Mr. Silvers. Then we ended up signing with a guy called, my group, R.O. And Nitro, we were the ones that were practicing, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day. And really, we over-practiced. And record companies like Motown, Susan DePass would come to our rehearsals. But nobody knew what to do with us, you know what I'm saying? Because we were like a machine. Because we had 3 horn players, there was 8 members. We rehearsed like you wouldn't believe it. People like, we rehearsed at a place called S.I.R. People like Earth, Wind, and Fire would walk in the room and check us out. People like Stanley Clarke would walk in the room and check us out. And we would just nod because we were really playing some serious music. We weren't as commercial as we should have been. We were really very personal. Our music was very personal. So finally, Norman Whitfield took a liking to us, and he didn't know really what to do with us, but as in terms of producing us. But Norman had done like Heard It Through the Grapevine, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, Wish It Would Rain, Car Wash. He was doing Car Wash at the time that he signed us.
Wow.
And he would take our horn section and blend us with, like, say, Rolls Royce. He would sit there and say, hey, whoever comes up with the horn, the horn line for this song first gets a bonus. It's $100 a piece or $150 a piece. Of course, we were going to come up with it, and then we would show Rolls Royce those parts, and then it would be our 3 horns, and then Rolls Royce's 3 horns. So what would happen is we would have, basically, when you doubled it, that was 12 horns. So on like Do Your Dance and things like that, that's Nitro as well as Rolls Royce horn section. We played on a lot of lot of records. I mean, even we did a lot of stuff with Leon Haywood. Don't Push It, Don't Force It. And actually, that's where I met James Ingram. James Ingram was from Ohio. He used to do a lot of stuff with Leon Haywood as well. You know, the group, his brothers. I remember when Switch had just had dropped their first single, right? And they were signed to Motown. And I can remember going to a party with James, and James was like, "Man, I've been out here hustling and paying my dues all this time, and my brother come right out of college and he get a record deal. Ain't that a booger? You know what I'm saying?" But we were, my horn section was on all kinds, anything that Norman Whitfield did with horns, from Junior Walker to Willie Hutch to Mama Tappy to whatever, we were doing it. And everything with Leon Haywood, even if he was doing Carlton or any of that stuff. We were on those horn sections. And then our guitar player, Pepper is on all the stuff with Leon Silvers. He's on all the stuff by Dynasty. He's the guitar player on, you know, the and the beat goes on. He kind of patterned that sign. So he's on the Save the Overtime song with I think it's Gladys Knight. But that guitar part is his sound is on all kinds of records that Leon Silvers did. But anyway, we did 2 albums with Norman. The group was called, again, Nitro. We were really playing for ourselves. And then Rick James ended up hiring us to become his punk funk horn players. So we started playing with him, doing Super Freak and Give It To Me Baby and all of that. We started touring with him then. And we did, we did those tours. So if you notice, if you watched Rick James, you'll see in 81, you'll see 3 black horn players that was dancing and singing and everything, because with Nitro, we were used to performing. And so we could sing, we could dance, and we could pretty much do it all at the same time and put on a show. I remember the first time I met Rick, well, not the first time I met Rick. Honestly, and this is going to sound kind of cocky, but when we first met Rick, he came through Norman Whitfield's, because Norman Whitfield had a studio called what was it called? A Sound Factory, a Hit Factory, some kind of factory. And again, this is going to sound cocky, but we rehearsed 8 hours a day. I'm serious. 8 hours a day. And so Rick came in there in the middle of our session, and he wanted Rick to hear You and I. And he wanted Norman to hear You and I. And the song was hot. I'm not gonna lie, the song was hot, but we were like, man, who's this dude? I ain't gonna lie, we thought he was like a clown, right? And he was very sincere what he was doing, but that was the first song that we had heard from him that was really, really got us. So we used to actually walk in when he was in the big room at SIR. He had the big stage and everything, and we had a small stage just rehearsing, and we would go in there and we would kind of look at this guy, and we would I ain't gonna lie, we would kind of laugh, because we was like, man, he's doing all these acrobatic things with his voice, and we just didn't take it serious, right? So for years later to come back and end up playing with him and being seriously grateful to play with him, right? Because by that time we realized that, we were Nitro, we were personal, we were just playing for ourselves. We wasn't playing for the people. We were, our second album was called Return to Nitropolis. It had we had our own city. Our songs were, we were the 8 members of the hydrogen element or something. I can't even remember what nitrogen element, we were in our own world. But to make a long story short, or try to, that was a major move to play with Rick. And one of the first things he asked us, he said, look, if I asked y'all to get butt naked, would y'all get butt naked and play on stage? And we started laughing. We said, sure, because we had done, we're coming from, Funkadelics and all of them, watching them with diapers. We were doing all that kind of stuff ourselves. So that my first real meeting with him was in Buffalo at his rehearsal, and that was one of the first questions he asked us.
Wow. So when you I mean, it sounded like you were doing a lot of time with Motown because you named everything Motown based. When they were like circulating the group, did they even bother to try to acknowledge you guys individually?
Well, when we were signed to Norman had his own company. He had left Motown. So all that the car wash and all that was on Whitfield Records, which was actually distributed by Warner Brothers. Okay, so he wasn't with Motown at that time, but so that his situation lasted fairly. It was very lucrative for a minute, and then I think him and Mo Austin at Warner Brothers had a falling out, and that's kind of when things kind of went kind of haywire, which was at the same time we ended up going with Rick, and Pepper ended up going with Dynasty, and so that kind of broke up our group. Okay, but we had basically said that once we did the tours with Rick, we were going to come back together and form our group Nitro again, right? That was our original goal. But I'm the only one that came back to put a demo together, right? So I'm the only one to put money to do that. And I was kind of by myself at that time. So I created a group here in Columbus. And also a friend of mine used to be with Undisputed Truth, and we ended up creating a girl. We were Laker fans, so I'm kind of back and forth. I was back and forth between Columbus and Los Angeles. So we were Laker fans, and we decided, you know what? Let's try to. We knew the Lakers were going to be in the championship, so we had an idea. Let's create a girl group and do a theme song for the Lakers, and probably everybody in LA probably thought the same thing. But ironically, his girlfriend managed some of the Laker girls. So girl group that had Paula Abdul in it and several other girls that were Laker girls. And we did a song that was hot, but the Laker girls, the Lakers wouldn't let us use the name for the Laker girls. So we ended up calling the group Girls Time, which is going to be interesting because I'll come back to that name. We ended up calling the group Girls Time. And as I was doing that, I was also producing some rock music for, I can't remember the guy's name, but Rick's sister Penny brought Tina Marie to the rehearsal. I got to digress. I ran into Rick James's sister at a club, and we were catching up to each other. This was after I left Rick, and we're catching up to each other. And she's like, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "I got a group like this," which I came back to Columbus and I had created a group on my own, right? Based upon Nitro didn't come back together, but I still, I had a record deal before I was with Rick. So I couldn't see myself being a, basically a side man with Rick James for the rest of my life after having the life that I'd already had. You know what I'm saying? I just couldn't see that. And so I created a group called Cocoa Pop. Well, the group was called Renegade at the time. I came back to Columbus and I created a group. And Tina Marie heard the demo. She heard the demo. And she came. Well, listen, I'm messing this up a little bit. I had come back to Ohio and cut a demo on a group I called Renegade. In the meantime, I was in LA producing a girl group that was called Girls Time. They had the Laker girls. So Tina came into the studio and had heard the demo that Rick's sister had presented to her, Rick's sister presented the demo of Renegade. She liked it. She came into the studio and said, "Hey, Chris, I want to do a deal with your group. Me and you can produce the group. Where is the group?" I said, "They're in Ohio." So she brought them out one at a time, brought them out to Los Angeles, and they were staying at her house off of Ventura Boulevard. They were staying at her house. Unbeknownst to me, Rick's brother, who was an attorney, Leroy, had given her 10 grand to do the demo and to invest it in us. I didn't know anything about it. But I knew he knew about what I was doing. And I skipped a whole nother, my life is so crazy. Like what do you call that dude? What's the dude? Forrest Gump. I've done so much kind of stuff that I'm not going to even go there. But Rick had offered me a deal earlier on a group that I was working with, but it didn't work out. That same project ended up being the project that Tina was interested in. So to make a long story short, or try to put it all together, she started bringing the guys out from Columbus to record at her house because she had an Atari 8-track in her living room, and she brought the other members out at the house, and they stayed at her house, and we recorded basically the demos at her house, and we also helped her do the album that had Lover Girl. We helped her do some of the creation on that, and put that project together. In fact, we were her backup band for several shows. And so we did a whole demo with her. When the time came to get a deal, she was going to take us to Sony. The situation kind of changed a little bit. Instead of us being co-producers of the project, she wanted us everybody else was getting money. Rick's sister was getting a finder's fee. The attorney was getting, Rick's brother was the attorney. He was getting 10 grand. Rick's sister was getting 10 grand. Bobby Brooks was the engineer, was getting 10 grand. She wanted 50 grand to produce the album, and my group was going to split 10 grand. And that's not what we had talked about. That was not it at all. And what I had been doing is when I saw stuff was going south, I was sneaking my demos out of her house and copying them. So I had my own copies. And one night, Benny Medina came into the studio. He was at Motown, and he's the guy that the Fresh Prince is about. He came into the studio, and I was working on the girl group that were the Laker Girls. And he came in about maybe 11 o'clock in the morning, and he stayed till about 5 o'clock. Well, 11 o'clock at night. He stayed till about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I gave him the demo for my Renegade group, and he had the demo for the girls I was working on. And at 11 o'clock or so the next morning, he called me into Motown, and he offered me a deal on both artists. So the deal kind of ratcheted down to just my group my group Renegade at the time. And what happened was, I told him, I said, you guys if you want to do this deal, you got to match the deal I have with CBS. And CBS didn't know anything about the side deal that Tina wanted us to sign, because Tina wanted us to do the $50,000. That was a side deal. That was not part of CBS. So I showed Motown the contract that was a direct contract with CBS, and Motown matched the deal. So we ended up signing to Motown. And so my group changed the name to Cocoa Pop, and we did 2 albums on Motown. So that's how that whole history of Motown kind of goes in. I was with Nitro, which was with Whitfield Records, who had been a part of Motown history. Then with Rick James, and then with my group Cocoa Pop. So then I had Rick mad at me and Tina Marie mad at me. Rick was mad because we didn't take the deal with him at earlier, and then Tina was mad because we didn't take the deal with her. And so I was definitely a renegade at that time.
Wow.
So, I'm listening to the whole thing. So, and you mentioned contract. So basically, you're dealing with two different people at the time giving you a certain type of contract based on your demo and your proposal. But later on, you were down to. Did you feel trapped?
No, I didn't feel trapped. I just because what I felt a little problem. I felt a little I was a little, I don't want to say I didn't feel trapped. I felt like I had allegiance to Tina, but that's not what we had agreed on. We'd agreed that we were going to split production on this project. We didn't agree that we were going to give you $50,000 to do the project. We didn't agree that. And then now all of a sudden, the band who had been staying in because they had been staying at her house, and unbeknownst to us, when that $10,000 that Leroy had given her ran out, she kind of changed toward the guys. We didn't know that they were living on the money that Leroy had given her. You see what I'm saying? We thought that was just her being cool, and she was cool. I'm not saying that, but I didn't find out till years later that Leroy, and that's in a whole nother. I found out in Brazil that Leroy had given her that 10 grand. So what happened is when that money ran out, she kind of changed, and I moved the guys into my house. And I moved the guys into my house at the same time I was having a baby. So, it kind of changed my whole relationship with my son's mother. Um, and it just took a lot of toll on us. So, and make a long story short, when when we got the deal from CBS, it didn't have Tina's side deal was what stopped us from doing that deal, and especially with Motown saying, okay, hey, look, we'll match that. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was 150 grand, and they was giving us an advance, another 50 grand on it. So it was a total like 200 grand at the time, and she was talking about giving us 10 grand between four of us to split. That wasn't that wasn't too much brain science to decide we're going to Motown. Plus, I had always wanted to be on Motown since I was a kid. I mean, they had the Temptations, the Supremes. I mean, I couldn't have. That was my lifetime dream. I having a choice of going with Tina and going with Motown. It was like I had to go with Motown.
Hmm. Yeah. So now, you said you only had two albums with the group Coco Pop, right?
Right, right.
And
But we did.
mhm.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. Let you ask the
I
question.
was gonna ask. So did you? I mean, why you were with Motown? Was there anyone else of influence that kind of took you along the way besides Tina and Rick?
Well, I would say just being there was being at Motown. That was a major influence. But it was like it was ironic when I was playing with Rick. My friends Reggie Calloway and them were with a group called Midnight Star. So I knew them when we were all kids in the group, Mad Dog Fire Department. So I'm just saying, I knew them when we were all kids, and they were hitting. I would say Reggie Calloway and them, they were hitting at that time. They hit with Freakazoid and all that, and Slow Jam. But at the same time, he had that song called Levert. I mean, not Levert. What was the name of that? Casanova.
Okay.
So I was, so I was loving the fact that these are my boys that I had grown up with, and they were having hits, so I was listening to them. I mean, I was on Motown, man, so I was listening to everything. At the same time, I ain't gonna lie, I had a lot of ego because I'm coming from Rick James, and so I wasn't listening to that many people, but I was, Benny Medina really took a chance on us. Now, what I'll say that really became cool was as I was with Coco Pop, and so I can go through the story a little bit. As I was with Coco Pop, my group, A New Edition, we're doing lunchrooms at high schools in Los Angeles in exchange for K-Day Radio playing our songs. So we would do stuff like Crenshaw High School in exchange for K-Day playing our songs. As I was doing those shows, one day it hit me there's the boys, there's New Edition, there's New Kids on the Block, and I thought about it. There are not any black teenage girl groups. And I thought about it. I kept thinking there hasn't been none since I was a kid. I'm not saying there wasn't any in neighborhood kids, neighborhood girl groups, because girl groups was all in talent shows. But I thought about it. And I'm like, I haven't heard any girl groups on the radio since I was a kid, and I'm serious, not black,
Right.
And so I created one called Teen Dream. I took the idea to Benny Medina. Benny Medina had just went over to Warner Brothers, and I created this girl group called Teen Dream. And immediately he signed them over to Warner Brothers. As that song took off, or as that song started breaking, and the video came out, everybody and their mom started coming up with girl groups. So I'm going to say I'm gonna take and say that wasn't nobody. I didn't hear no girls on the radio like Teen Dream before Teen Dream. So when that happened, I'm gonna say that was kind of a beginning of a new kind of girl group. So we're talking about 1985, 86, 87. There weren't any girl groups, not black girl groups on the radio. So, and ironically, just to show how things work, I met with Foster and McElroy, who were with Club Nouveau, also on Warner Brothers at that time, who even before that I knew because they were staff writers at Motown when I was at Motown. So we met here in Columbus, Ohio, and they were doing a show here at the fair, and they were like, Chris, what did you do with that girl group? How did you do that girl group? Because we want to do it with an adult girl group, and they created En Vogue.
Oh.
So that you see what I'm saying? That whole kind of thing stemmed into coming from that whole Teen Dream thing, and even deeper than that. I was working with Sylvia Rome briefly, and I used to pick up the kids from Troop and pick them up and record them at my house. Okay, so they got signed to Electra Asylum with Sylvia, and without going into too deep of a story, because I want to tell the history of the Teen Dream situation, but we had a guaranteed 2-album deal at Warner Brothers, and some stuff happened. We had a song in the movie "Lean on Me." My lead singer in Teen Dream was in the movie School Days with Spike Lee. A lot of things happened, but we ended up losing the deal at Teen Dream at Warner Brothers. And a friend of mine who was named Slack Johnson had been at Capitol Records, and he loved the idea. And he said, "I'm going over to Malaco. Why don't you bring your girl group down to Malaco?" So, cut a new album on the girls, this time at Malaco. It really wasn't their type of music. They didn't really know what to do with it. It was they're mostly in gospel and blues, and basically just lost the album. But Matthew Knowles heard the stuff, and Matthew Knowles, with a friend of mine named Alonzo Jackson, who worked with me on Teen Dream's second album, he had told Matthew Knowles about our production in the girl group. He heard the music, and next thing you know, I'm in Texas producing a girls group called Girls Time. Again, that's where that name comes up again. The girl group called Girls Time, with a young singer by the name of Beyonce, and Kelly Rowland and all of them. And some of the songs that I had done on Teen Dream's second album, one song in particular called Sunshine, was a song that I did on Destiny's Child. But they weren't called Destiny's Child. They were called Girls Time. So, that's why I keep saying I feel like I'm like Forrest Gump, because I done kind of wiggled through this whole scenario, and as God closes one door, he opens up another door, and sometimes it's more lucrative. So I was working with Beyonce and them when they were 11 and 12, but it all started from that group Teen Dream, because there wasn't nothing like that.
So would you say that your career took, instead of performing, you put a performance portion aside and got more into behind the scenes work? Would you say that was fair?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, when I finished with Cocoa Pop, I was like 30, 32, 33, and I'm like, man, I I I I felt funny because I mean, I was out there with Rick, and when you're out there with Rick, you get the best and the worst of everything. Meaning, I fell in love with the idea of love because I was just tired of women just all over the place. It's like you didn't, I would be on stage and I would point the flashlight in the audience to girls, right? And I say, security, go get her, go get her, go get her. And I'm not the only one. I'm just saying that was just part of the life. And after a while, and having been touring since I was 14 years old, that was like 20 years, man. 20 years of getting up on stage, 20 years uh, of backing up people, 20 years of making CDs and well, not even CDs, man, back cassettes and making hundreds of cassettes, making, trying to get record deals, rehearsals, man. Like, man, I'm tired of stage. So I really got more behind the scenes. And I think that, Cocoa Pop we did some good music. I got a chance to work with strings, like 30 string players and things like that. I got a chance to be on Motown, but I realized, I'm tired of playing saxophone, or not tired. It just what I didn't have the love anymore.
Right. Now, now, going back, because I want to probably start, getting into more of the different styles of music that, your journey.
Okay.
You mentioned funk, and then I'm quite sure once you got into the 80s, it started getting into more digital type things, and then later on we started venturing into hip hop and R&B and
Oh, okay.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
when you're dealing, I guess you were talking about the late 60s, um,
Mm-hmm.
and how that music kind of evolved from, I guess, what the standard was, what, James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh yeah, my favorites.
Uh,
Yeah. And then I mean you had the Motown stuff still going on, and you had the stuff out of Stax, because Shaft and all those were big records. Shaft and Curtis Mayfield's Superfly. So those were movie driven songs, but they were songs they were very timely songs. Those are and that I'll probably say that's probably the late '60s, early '70s. But again, we're talking about middle school and developing. Um, to me, as it got toward the '70s and the mid '70s, um, especially out there in LA, and I'm not going to say LA, there was a change. Disco came on because and I think you and I talked about this before. We had the bands were really really funky. You know what I'm saying? The bands were, especially '70s, people were jamming and they were jamming and there was always bands at the clubs. You would go out to a club and see a band everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Toward the latter part of the '70s, disco came. And then pretty much the people were the stars themselves. The DJ became the stars. The DJ was the music. The people themselves were on the dance floor. They were line dancing. There wasn't so much room for bands. I mean, Casey and the Sunshine Band kind of made it through that situation. You know, the Rick James did fairly well through the early part of the '80s. Um, but Donna Summers and them, on the radio, two on, I mean, four on the floor. That stuff kind of through the mid '80s. That's what was king, man. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of bands I think got killed off based upon the disco era. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it ever recovered after that, because that's what, again, with the DJs became, I would say, more of a focal point, and the people themselves dancing. And so even when I was with Rick, I can remember, I can't remember the name of the group, but they used to open up for us. It's like a jungle sometimes. It make me wonder how I keep from going under, and
Grandmaster Flash,
I can't. What was the name of that group? Hmm?
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five.
Grant. Yeah, and I mean it was funky, man. I'm just saying it was off the chain. So a lot of that stuff was DJ driven. You see what I'm saying? And then you started getting the MCs. So by that time, the disco had probably, from my standpoint, killed off most of the bands. And then you had that new influx of hip hop, which was sampling and again DJ. All you needed was a DJ and a microphone,
Mm.
and that was the entertainment.
Now going back to the 60s and 70s. So now I'm gonna try to go a little peel some layers again. So
Okay.
when now as far as socially or even the community per se, when people start really getting into music, really trying to do something like your Maurice White and I even go deeper with Charles Stephanie, all these different types of people that had different things. How much support did you get from the community when it came to creating things as a musician back in those times?
From the community.
Yeah, from you,
Well, I think
hood, your
I
family,
think
your
I
friends.
well, like I said, and where I grew up in Ohio, every high school had a band, right? Every high school, so that you were part of the community. You know what I'm saying? You might do a block party in your community. You see what I'm saying? Everybody. I grew up in an area called Southfield. Southfield was the southern part of Columbus, and everybody know who the Soul Superbs was. That's what we were called. So everybody, you could see us pushing. I mean, literally, you could see us pushing our amplifiers on wagons around the corner for rehearsals, or in my backyard. We either rehearsed in my garage or my basement, and my backyard had the basketball court. So people would come to my house. Let's go to Powell's house and make friends. Make friends with Kool-Aid, because we always had Kool-Aid and we had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So you got basketball in the backyard, you got the band rehearsing in the basement or the garage, and it was a complete community. My house was the recreation center.
Mm. So did you have because I think you mentioned something about the girls liking musicians. Did you? I mean, you said that because that was one of the main reasons why you got interested in music, correct?
No, that's the reason why we started singing.
Oh, okay, singing.
We started singing because we were musicians. We were backing up like I say, Cuba Gooding in there, the main ingredient, the Delphonics, and we would walk. I mean, we would watch them come out on stage and watch these girls fainting, man. Really fainting and falling out, like that 5 heartbeat thing. That's from some real stuff. I'm not saying they was real, but I'm just saying girls was fainting like that. The Delphonics. I learned one of my biggest, to this day, we were backstage with them, and they have this particular move, and I can't explain it other than if you watch the old Delphonics, they look like they had padded shoulders when they moved. They had a certain way where they moved back and forth, but it looked like they had padded shoulders. But it wasn't padded shoulders. It was the way they carried their shoulders. They were regular people, but right before they walked out the dressing room, their shoulders would go up in the air, and they would take on a whole different persona. And I mean it. If you look at their videos, you'll see that they had this little thing where their shoulders didn't come down through the whole set. They were snapping. They just moved. It was just so smooth. But that was a major. I ain't gonna lie. That was a major a major point in my life when I saw, wow, that's all. Not to say all you got to do, but that little bit of thing made them so unique. And like I said, the girls was falling out, man. I'm like, I gotta sing. I mean, we gotta sing. We gotta do harmonies, and we were doing basic harmonies, but like I said, until we got with Mr. Silvers, and then he taught us some deeper stuff, the same kind of stuff he was doing with his kids, or that he had done with the Silvers. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's when we started singing, man. The girls like singers. And you know what? This is deep for me right now, because I have a nonprofit program for talented kids.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling you, over the last 4 years, we've had kids on American Idol, Ellen DeGeneres. I just had a kid on The Voice here in the United States and a kid on The Voice in Brazil. Okay. It is so hard to find a male singer right now. It is so hard to find a young male singer. It's like they all want to rap.
Right.
And it's man, I'm telling you right now, a hot male act would kill it, you know?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get
And
in.
I've been looking for a hot male for days, man.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get into, because reason why I was asking about, as far as the girls liking music, or you mentioned singing, I wanted to find out, like, what styles were the ones that you noticed, where they really sought after the most. Was it the soprano singer? Was it the baritone? I mean, did he have to have a certain type of look? I mean, what did you experience over that time?
Well, I'm gonna put my thing out there. Again, I can remember when one of the promotions on, and I know I'm gonna say the promotion back here in Ohio. I can't say about the rest of the world, but I can remember when the summer that the Dramatics came out and the Stylistics came out. Right, they both came out the same summer and they both killed it. One of the things they used to talk about with the Dramatics, and I apologize Dramatics ahead of time because I'm not saying this, but one of the things they used to talk about was how ugly the Dramatics were, right? That was one of the things you got to look at their album, got to look at the first album. And again, if you look at the first album, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But that was one of the things they used to talk about, right? But them dudes could sing their butts off, right? That album with In the Rain and all that stuff that came out that summer was so classic. But to make a long story short, if you listen to the album, you'll hear the kid with the falsetto, who was a major part of their sound. I think his name is T.J. Reynolds. That ended up becoming the voice of their group, or one of the voices between the falsetto and him. I'm not sure if he even started off as being the main voice, but over the years he became the voice. Him and the guy with the falsetto. And then they had the low part in there, and that when in those groups you had a falsetto, you had a bass, you had all of those voices combining together to make something really special. Now the Stylistics hit extremely hard with that, that first album with that guy and that falsetto so sweet. But if you go back to the Temptations, you got to look at that whole thing. You got Dennis, not Dennis Edwards, but Dennis, what's the name? Ruffin, Eddie Ruffin. What's it? Eddie Ruffin? David Ruffin, excuse me. David Ruffin. You had Eddie Kendricks. And then you had all those other vocalists blended, Melvin Franklin. So when you had those you had all of those voices. But when you got, so I think it was just a combination of all them voices. But here come the moments with the falsetto. Here come the Delphonics with the falsetto that drove their sound. Well, it wasn't just a falsetto. That dude, Poogie from the Delphonics, he had a phenomenal voice. So he could go from his natural to his false. And the women loved it. I mean, they loved it. So I can't say, I say not anybody with a good falsetto. That sounds wrong, but a good. Well, even look at years later. Look at Richard Dimples Fields. You remember? Are you old enough to remember him?
My mom used to
Dimples.
My mom used to date him.
Okay, well, see, he hit hard with that falsetto, and hadn't been a one around for a while. He hit hard. Whoever comes out. I mean, look at Maxwell. I mean,
that's what I was trying to really, get to the bottom of, because I remember every time somebody had a deep voice, the women cringe, but at the same time, the guy that had like that falsetto, they cringe as well. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, what was the one that was, was that competition, the falsetto versus the baritone, or was it like equally distributed?
I would say there's not too many people that would sing bass like Melvin Franklin. I've only in my lifetime I've only ran into about 3 people that could go that kind of low. You know what I'm saying? I just met a kid recently, and this brother was I gave him a note to sing, and he went an octave lower. I couldn't believe it. But those are very special voices. You don't hear too many. You can hear a lot of people do falsettos. They're not going to be all rich and beautiful falsettos, but a lot of people can do falsettos. But it's very seldom when you can get that rich bass voice. You know what I'm saying? So to me, even right now, the way what's his name with the Temptations, that Old Man River, the song he sang, Old Man River, that was off the chain, man. Or I'll give you even more. The first time Isaac Hayes had that Hot Butter Soul, and he was singing in that baritone voice, man. I seen girls throwing their clothes off and falling over. He was here in Columbus, and I couldn't believe it. He had the symphony, he had the the daggone chains around his chest, and all he had basically a vest. In fact, he took the vest off. He ain't nothing but chains on and a bare chest. He's talking about I stand accused. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, you know. And it was a rich baritone voice. And the same thing with Barry White. You know what I'm saying? So I can't say that anyone is better than the other because Barry was killing. I mean, Barry ran the disco for a while. Barry was killing them.
Right, with those string arrangements and then the 16 beat. You know.
Oh man, he was beating them down, man. He was the man.
Yeah.
And them girls, I mean, it didn't have anything to do with his height or his size. That mug was singing.
So what it sounds like though, then sound like the women back then had way more variety versus something that was trying to corner the market. They had more to choose from. Would you say that was like a luxury?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm saying there was more to choose from, but you got to think about it, you know. The Temptations were okay. I can't go back to the older groups, but I can remember, you know, some names like the Ink Spots or the Platters and all of those groups. They were 4 and 5 part vocalists, right? What became really cool about the Temptations is all of a sudden you seen this elegance, you seen tall dudes, tall, slim, tall dudes that could step, and they had, I mean, I'm gonna tell you, I can remember Les Brown, who is Les Brown is a motivational speaker, right?
Right.
He used to be on a radio station here in Columbus. Okay, I can remember Earth, Wind and Fire opening up for the Temptations at a place called Scioto Downs. And the funny thing is, and I'll never forget this, Les Brown said, "The Temptations will outdraw Jesus Christ." Okay.
Wow.
And because they were so big, you know, I mean, Cloud 9, all these records, they were so big. So the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is that because I still can't say nobody. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some young singers, you know. I mean, I you know, but when you start listening to the originals and you know, some of that stuff back in the days was just so good, you know. But the Temptations to me was especially that original set. You know, that you couldn't beat that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, or the Dells, like that guy from the Dells, you know, which is the guys that actually singing the stuff in the 5 Heartbeats. I mean, you hear big voices, but you always gonna have that falsetto to balance. You know what I'm saying? So that falsetto was always the balance. You might have had some fake bass vocals, you know what I'm saying? But they didn't all have, like Melvin Franklin, they didn't all have that bass voice. But they made, like, even like the Shy-Lights, you know, they had all those different voices, but they had the one main voice that stood out. It could go high, and then we'd have somebody could go low too, but they might not hit that same kind of note like Melvin did.
Now,
now
I
don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
No, it's all good. Everything is what's say groovy, right? Um, the how okay, so describing all these different types of variation of styles. Um, when it came to the A&R, or the actual people that were actually coming up with contracts and different record companies, you know, how much control did they have of these particular styles? Were they like, I mean, with the exception of Barry Gordy, because we already knew how he got down, because he knew how to get. He was part of the talent per se, right? But people like I think Warner Brothers and Atlantic Records and all these different types of people. How would I mean? Did they have a lot of influence and control of how people were coming out with the music, or did they have to just wait for talent to come and they go ahead and pick it?
Well, I think things have really changed nowadays, but back in the day, if you could get a song to a good A&R person, if you could get a good demo to an A&R person at a Motown, because it's always who you know what I'm saying? It's all about relationships. But back in the day, I'll say that they would listen, you know. And if you could get a song to them, if you had three hot songs, it's a good chance that you got a good shot at getting a deal. If you had good three, three hits, first, second, and third singles. Um, and they would, and they, we're talking about somebody who would hopefully go with you through that whole record. You know what I'm saying? They look at what you got, let you know, hey, what you need to do to it, or at least what their thoughts on doing something with it. They may come in and tell you, hey, we really like this, we don't like that. They may take a song and let some of their promotion company or promotion department listen to it, and they say, hey, this might be hot. You need to go back and work on this a little bit more. When I deal at Motown, the promotion department had a guy named Tony Anderson had heard our song, and he was one of the people. He ended up becoming vice president of Arista and Mercury. One of the things that he told us from the very beginning, I heard your song. You guys had a single. You had several singles on your album, and I really believed in this record, so I voted. From that standpoint, he wasn't promote. He was promotion. He was head of promotion, but he had input in the A&R too. You know what I'm saying? Those those days are kind of past now. I think the record companies, what they do now is they're looking at how many views you got on YouTube, how many streams, and how many sales you got on Spotify. They want to look at your social media, because if you've got high social media, it's a much better shot at them putting some money behind you. So they're not taking chances. Back in the day, like for example, just think about it. Sly and the Family Stone, which to me is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever signed them, and let me tell you this, I can remember when Sly and the Family Stone was in Columbus, Ohio, and they did a talent show.
Mm-hmm.
They did a talent show, and they won. And there's probably a lot more politics to it, but I can remember my band that I was with we were horrible. I said, you guys need to see this group, because I had been in the hospital and saw them on a television show. And my band was like, are you crazy? What's this stuff? I said, you guys can't hear this? You're not hearing what's going on? And they was watch. I look at they had the wigs, the wigs on. The girls was screaming, they was stepping and all that. They're like, man, let's go. And the grandstands are huge at Ohio State Fair, but wasn't hardly nobody there. And the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is, an A&R person, whoever heard that, if my guys in my band, who I thought were pretty good, they didn't hear it. So for an A&R person, to me, that was a no-brainer. That would be a no-brainer to me. You know what I'm saying? So that whoever, I'm not gonna say this is what it was, but that A&R, he might have took it. He might have took it on himself to say, "Hey, man, I think you need to sign this group," or like even James Brown. James Brown signed to King Records or a subsidiary of King Records. That guy who was the A&R person that took it in there, King Records didn't want to sign James Brown. You
Wow.
see what I'm saying? They didn't see anything there. So the point is that A&R back then was a little bit more involved. They were like, they may have to go on the line. Okay, I believe in this group. You know, they might have to do that. Nowadays, it ain't like that so much. They're looking at, okay, if you got numbers, then we're interested, But if you don't have no numbers, I have a couple artists right now that are hot. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
one of them got like 50,000, 60,000 views on YouTube, another 50,000 on Spotify and all that. Um, that don't mean nothing to a record company.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean anything to a record company. And so I'm sitting here now with, okay, well, I have a couple of distributors that are interested because the kid is hot and he's got a couple other bangers that I'm sitting on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I got to do a distribution deal first and hopefully get some funding besides my own funding to make it work. Luckily, the people that I'm talking to are looking to put some money behind it. But I'm just saying, there it's a different day now. It's not so much about the talent, it's about the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's about how many people are watching you in social media, how many those kind of things. I don't mean to cut you off. I got to do another show. One of my artists, we just finished one show with one of the set of kids, but I've got to do another show. I got to take another artist to perform, and he's got to do a show. I got to change clothes and everything. And I'm a little funky from being out here in the heat with these other kids. Because remember I told you earlier,
Right.
the kids were performing outside. So,
Well,
but please, if anybody who's listening, please look at our website, S.T.A.R.S. Worldwide, STARSWorldWide.org. And that's stars with the S worldwide.org. We have some extremely talented people. And also, that's our Instagram, S.T.A.R.S. Worldwide. But we've got some, I got to make sure I say that. And we're always looking for talented kids. Our program is free for kids 11 to 22. And we're working with kids as far away as South Africa, Ghana, Brazil. I got projects on all of them. Australia now. So I got to let people know about that. We've got a nonprofit that, it's based upon Motown, which make the cream rise to the top.
well,
So that's got to say that.
now is it starsworldwide.com?
.org. Yeah.
So yeah, I want everybody to check out brother Chris Powell. He has starsworldwide.com. I'm quite sure
.org. .org.
not org. I'm sorry. I put it in the in the chat so people can see it.
Oh, very good. Very good.
I'm hoping that you can come back and we can go more into the styles and things. I know you have a lot of things to do, and I appreciate the time that you put in with us. Yeah, but definitely, I would definitely want to go back and explore some of the formulas that was used back then to get into the music business, and then the formulas that's used now. Because you mentioned the numbers and things as far as social media and views versus your talent and your A&R. So I really want to get deep into that too, so I can. Because I think a lot of people are really curious because they only get this stuff from TV, but they don't really hear.
Right. Well, it's not like Empire. It's not like Empire, and it's not like which don't get me wrong. I like those I like those shows. I like those shows. But it's really about they're looking at what kind of stuff. It's always, as an artist, you have to promote yourself. You have to promote yourself. But in this day, if you're really not good at social media, you could be the next James Brown, or you could be the next Michael Jackson. And if you don't have social media, people will never know anything about you. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Even if you got hot material, if you can't get somebody to get that social media out there, then you know, you know, you know, you might as well just be playing in the house. You know what I'm saying? Playing some pots and pans.
Well, maybe when you come back, maybe there's some other people that may be able to send their information either in the chat or whatever. So when you're doing things like this, I think more people will start spreading the word and getting you more talent. So I'll
Hey
be
man, well I appreciate you. I appreciate you spending the time. You know, I hope I hope I didn't rub my mouth too much. I got too many stories, so
oh
we didn't even get it. We didn't even get into none of that stuff with touring and none of that stuff. So I'm just saying, I apologize if I ran my mouth. I hope we got a couple of your questions answered, and I look forward to talking to you again. Art.
this is good. I threw my notes away because I knew this was better than what you were saying stuff better in my notes. So so when I bring
Okay.
I definitely want to chop it up with the more things about behind the scenes. So I'm glad. Thank you,
Okay.
Drew. And if anybody have any last questions, because he really has to go. So anybody have any questions or anything, um, going once, going. Well, the thing is, when I say this, I think people type in things in chat, and then later on it comes like way late. But it's okay. But
Okay.
if anybody have any questions for the next time, just save it for the next time, and look up again, Stars Worldwide. His name is Chris Powell. Look up Chris Powell, musician. You know what? There's another musician named Chris Powell.
Right,
But
right. You got to go under Stars Worldwide. I don't have any discography. I mean, there's some discography, but it ain't much. I mean, for I again, I'm not good at marketing my daggone self, so I never really thought about it. But I'm on a lot of hit records. That's all I can say. But Stars Worldwide would be what I'm promoting. I want people to know about is with the kids.
okay. So without any further ado, we're going to end the interview and hope everybody has a good Saturday. And man, maybe next time I'll find another time slot when nobody else is streaming because it's kind of hard. But thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone's support. And I'm gonna try to bring good material just like this because these brothers that come in on these streams, they have a lot of things to do and they donate their time and there's messages and things. So I really appreciate everything. Okay. So everybody, you
All right,
guys,
young man.
everybody, take care once again. Thank you everybody for your support.